It's October 30th, 1997. In a quiet home in Newton, Massachusetts, an 8-month-old baby suddenly stops breathing. Panic fills the house. An ambulance is called. Doctors rush to save him. But within minutes, it becomes clear that something is terribly wrong. This is not a simple medical emergency. This is not an accident. And the only person who was alone with the baby when it happened is his babysitter. Her name is Louise Woodward. Matthew Eapen was 8 months old, healthy, alert, and deeply loved by his parents, Deborah and Sunil Eapen, both medical professionals. Like many working parents, they needed help caring for their child, so they hired a young British au pair who had recently arrived in the United States. Louise Woodward was just 19 years old. She had no criminal record, no history of violence, and no obvious warning signs. To the Eapens, she appeared polite, responsible, and trustworthy. Someone safe enough to care for their infant son. At least, that is what they believed. On that afternoon, Louise was alone with Matthew. According to her account, he had been fussy and crying more than usual. At some point, she claimed he stopped responding. She called emergency services, sounding frightened and confused. When paramedics arrived, Matthew was unresponsive. He was rushed to Boston Children's Hospital, where doctors immediately noticed injuries that raised serious alarm. Brain swelling, subdural bleeding, retinal hemorrhaging. To experienced pediatric specialists, these injuries pointed toward a disturbing conclusion: shaken baby syndrome, a form of severe abuse caused by violently shaking an infant, often resulting in catastrophic brain damage or death. Matthew never regained consciousness. 5 days later, he was declared brain dead. Life support was removed. An 8-month-old child was gone, and the investigation began. Police focused quickly on Louise Woodward. She was the only adult present when Matthew collapsed. Initially, she denied doing anything unusual. But under questioning, she admitted that she might have shaken the baby slightly in an attempt to stop him from crying. That admission would define the entire case. Prosecutors argued that Louise lost control, overwhelmed by the stress of caring for an infant. They claimed she violently shook Matthew, causing fatal brain injuries. Medical experts for the prosecution testified that the damage could not have occurred accidentally. Louise Woodward was charged with first-degree murder. The trial that followed became one of the most controversial and emotionally charged cases in modern American legal history. Media coverage was relentless. In the United States, many parents saw Louise as a dangerous caregiver who betrayed trust in the most unforgivable way. In the United Kingdom, she was portrayed as a vulnerable teenager destroyed by a foreign justice system. Courtrooms were packed. News cameras followed every detail. The world watched as science, emotion, and public opinion collided. The defense presented a different narrative. Their medical experts argued that the injuries might not have been caused by shaking at all. They suggested that Matthew may have suffered a previous head injury that went unnoticed, and that his collapse was delayed rather than immediate. They challenged the certainty of shaken baby syndrome diagnoses, pointing out inconsistencies and gaps in the science. According to them, Louise Woodward was not a killer, but a scapegoat for a tragedy that medicine could not fully explain. The jury was left with two competing truths. One child was dead, and no explanation felt complete. After days of deliberation, the jury returned its verdict. Louise Woodward was found guilty of second-degree murder. The courtroom fell silent. She faced the possibility of spending the rest of her life in prison. For many, justice had finally been served. But then, something extraordinary happened. The judge reviewed the case independently and made a decision that stunned the nation. He reduced the conviction from second-degree murder to involuntary manslaughter, citing concerns about the evidence and the uncertainty surrounding the medical conclusions. He then sentenced Louise Woodward to time already served. She walked free. One baby was dead. No one went to prison. The reaction was explosive. Some believed the system had failed Matthew Eapen and his parents. Others believed Louise Woodward had narrowly escaped a life destroyed by flawed science and public hysteria. To this day, the case remains deeply divisive. Louise Woodward returned to England and disappeared from public life. She rebuilt her future quietly, far away from cameras and courtrooms. Matthew Eapen, meanwhile, became a name forever linked to one of the most painful debates in criminal justice. Was Louise Woodward a killer who got away with murder? Or was she a young woman caught in the wrong place at the worst possible time? The case forces an uncomfortable question. When a child dies under mysterious circumstances, how certain can we ever be? How much trust do we place in science that continues to evolve? And how quickly do we look for someone to blame when tragedy strikes? Because sometimes, the most frightening part of a case like this is not the possibility of guilt, but the possibility that we may never truly know the truth. If you like our content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to our channel by clicking the subscribe button below.